My name is Sandra Coughlin. I'm the principal here at Lombard South. So I want to thank you for coming here this evening. This is a very interesting program, so we're very lucky to have Mr. Dugan with us. I would like to introduce you to our GPS coordinator and student outreach programming. How many of you have been to a Lombard Parent Series program before? Wonderful. Thank you for coming back and supporting us. Gilda does an amazing job in getting speakers into our district that meet the needs of our parents and our teachers and our students. So it's wonderful. Every place I go, I talk about Lombard Parent Series.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's fantastic.
Do the same.
Yeah. Yes. So
Thank you
for
so
everything
much.
you do.
Thanks, Sandra. Appreciate it. Who's from outside of the Glenbard schools? Raise your hand. Great, wonderful. I can't stress this enough, that the Glenbard Parent Series is for everyone and anyone. Please, those of you that didn't already pick up one of these brochures, make sure that you take one for a friend. You can see our auditoriums are large, and some people will often say to me, oh, that's a really great program that you have. And you know, I say this every time, it's not a great program if people don't come. And I am so glad all of you are here tonight. This is more of a niche program than we usually have, but I'm so impressed to see all of you here tonight. I'm not surprised though, so I'm very grateful. Did you know that some people in the audience heard you on WGN yesterday? And came, yeah, right here. So that's great, that's excellent. So some of the other handouts, you've got the GPS handout, brochure. This is a flyer that talks about 2 programs that are coming up. On this Saturday, we have a program on financial aid. Frank Palmasani does an amazing job. Frank will be talking from 10:30 to noon, and then 10:30 to 11:30, and then 11:30, one of your former students is coming, Carol is coming, to talk about his experience of graduating from college in 2 years, and how that's done. So if you're interested in hearing that, please join us at Lombard West. But please circle your calendar for this program with Dr. Tina Payne Bryson. She is amazing. We heard her a couple of years ago. She's funny, entertaining, and such good information on the brain. So the program is offered twice. It's at night on the 26th, on the 25th, and then at noon the next day. We also have a program with her. If you have younger children, her program at 9:30 on the 26th is the Whole Brain Child, No Drama Discipline. So please try to attend one of those programs, truly a highlight of the year. And then check out the others that we have for the rest of the year. There's also an evaluation. Please write legibly if you want to be on the reminder list. If you want to volunteer, we can always use people to help pass out flyers, sell books. That would be much appreciated. I have never received flowers from a speaker before, so I thank you for that, sir. I'm very touched by that. My family will appreciate them too. Dr. Michael Dugan, LCPC, CPC, CRC, is a professor and counselor for students with disabilities at the College of DuPage. He is known for his expertise and passion for empowering students with disabilities. He has developed one of the nation's first programs at a community college for students with developmental disabilities, as well as Autism America, a social support group for young adults on the autism spectrum. He's been awarded COD's Outstanding Advisor of the Year, Outstanding Divisional Faculty of the Year, and before COD, he directed the second largest disability service program in Oregon and was elected president of the Oregon Association of Educational and Disabilities. His first book, would you show us your first book, sir?
Sure.
It looks like this. You can recognize it when you go to your bookstore.
Available on Amazon.
First class support for college students on the autism spectrum. Practical advice for college counselors and education. It's available whenever books are sold. I am so happy you are here. I am so happy Dr. Dugan is here. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, good. I don't want to do the microphone. Me holding a microphone and the note cards and the clicker, it's just an accident waiting to happen. So I'm so happy to be here tonight. This is really a very special evening for me. I have so many people here who matter to me a lot here this evening. I have family members. I have my partner here. I have co-workers who mean the world to me. I have dear friends who mean a lot to me. I have my boss who's here. So I have this chance to utterly destroy my career tonight, which is an opportunity not many people get. But I have one of the best jobs in the world because I work at a community college. And I think community colleges are really magical places. Because, sure, they serve the traditional population of those students whom are wanting to go to a university and transfer to ISU or Northwestern and get a degree in psychology. But we also serve everyone in the community. So we serve retirees who just want to get better with technology so they can use their iPad to call their grandchildren. Or we serve people with intellectual disabilities who want to get better at their math skills so they can get a promotion at work and work the cash register. We work with everybody, far and few between, and I think that's something really special about community colleges. I like to think my education philosophy was influenced early on by when I started my career. I started at an unusual time at a college. I worked graduation week. That was my first week on the job. And graduation is an odd time to start, but it was the way it was. And so I was working the graduation that evening, and I started to talk to the students. I wanted to get a sense of what their experiences were like. And so I talked to them, and I said, what did you think of this place? Did you like it? Did you learn a lot? Were the faculty good? And I would say 9.5 out of 10 students raved. They said, oh, I had this philosophy teacher that was great, or I had this counselor that really cared, or this person in financial aid was amazing. Almost everyone gave a story of somebody that really had an impact on them. But once in a rare while, but I would bump into someone, and they'd say, no one really cared about me. They didn't care if I passed or if I graduated. All they cared about was cashing my tuition check. And that really struck me. That struck a chord with me because I thought, how could you invest 2, 3, 4, 5 years of your life maybe at a school and not connect to a single human being within that entire institution that you felt a connection to or that genuinely cared about your welfare? So that first week I decided that's going to be my philosophy. I'm going to make a connection with students. I don't want anyone that interacts with me to say that. I joke with my students that when they graduate, if they ever say that to somebody else, I'll change their grades and fail them, so they'll have to repeat. Because I don't want them to think that. I want them to know that they had a difference and they had a chance. So that's something that's very important to me. Now, sometimes the students I work with will say, well, how did you get in this field? How did you get into working with people with disabilities? How did you go where you are? What influenced you? Well, I was a child of the 70s. I was born in the 70s. And so I was influenced by a movie that probably a lot of you that are born in the 70s, and don't worry, I won't call you out, but a lot of you probably were influenced when you were growing up. It had a really good score. It was a science fiction movie. It had amazing special effects. I think it was way ahead of its time. The movie, of course, I'm talking about is Xanadu. Wasn't it amazing? Like, wasn't it not the best movie in the world? I was a little kid watching this movie, okay? And I loved it. I used to dance around the living room like I was Olivia Newton-John, and I was singing the songs. I love this movie. But why did it impact me, okay? So the story of the movie, as cheesy as it is, I really think it hit a chord with me as well. The whole concept, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you all have, but as a refresher, the idea is that all the great art, all the great music, all the great beauty of the world have been inspired by these 9 muses, whom are the children of the Greek god of thunder, Zeus, right? And so there's beauty everywhere because of them. The thing that really struck me as a little kid about that movie was that this idea that people could inspire other people. And I thought, I want to inspire people in my life. I want to change other people. I want to inspire greatness in others and become great in the process myself. So even though the movie was kind of cheesy, I think that message got implanted in me at an early age. So long story short, that's kind of where I got where I was. So I knew I wanted to inspire other people. So how did I do that? Originally, I was going to be a musician. That was my background. I used to play everything brass. My grandfather was a musician. I grew up with music all around me. So I used to play trumpet and trombone and tuba, anything brass I could do. And so it was my life. I did in high school. My area was jazz improvisation, which has to do with making stuff out of nothing, which is something I loved. And so I knew I wanted to be a jazz musician. I thought that was my passion and what I was going to do. And so that's what I did. And so I had a scholarship. I went to college. I started studying jazz. The problem was, if you really go into music seriously, you have to practice 6 or 8 hours a day. Now, how many of you are parents who have a kid who might be really good at playing an instrument or really good at doing something, but when it comes into putting in all the time and effort, they don't do it? Yeah, a lot of you raising your hand, you're like, I spent $500 on that damn instrument. Yeah. So I was one of those kids. I wasn't putting the time in, and it wasn't because that I cared. It just wasn't where my passion was. It wasn't where my fit was, and so I was not going to become a musician. That wasn't the direction I wanted to go. At the same time I was in college, and the same time I was studying music, though, I was incredibly lucky because I was taking a random anthropology course. And in that random anthropology course, we studied culture of disability. And that fascinated me. I wanted to understand more about what that experience entailed. And so I did an anthropological study because I wanted to make a good impression. And so I staged a fake car accident, and I lived in a wheelchair for 2 weeks. And I wanted to understand what that experience was like. And it wasn't to trivialize the experience of people with disabilities at all. That had nothing to do with it. The most important part of my research was each night I interviewed a different person with a different disability because I wanted to understand what the world was like from that perspective. And I learned so very much. I learned in the 90s, which by the way, the ADA was passed in 1990, 91. We think it's been around forever. It hasn't. But I heard all these kinds of stories of discrimination, of barriers, of narrow-mindedness, of doors being closed. And I thought, wow, this is something I want to learn more about. This is something I'm fascinated by. So I started to write about it. It caught a little bit of attention. My local newspaper did a story about the article that I wrote. And look, my mom saved this. Like, our mom's the best. God bless parents. Like, the paper is old and wrinkly, but she had it in the drawer for me. And look at that hair. Like, that's hair. You could make like 3 toupees with that. It's just fantastic. Gosh, with good hair. But my mom saved that article, and God bless her for that. So long story short, I changed my major. I decided I wanted to go in rehabilitation counseling, which is an area of counseling specifically for disabilities. And I thought I had found my way. And so I did my bachelor's degree, and then I did my master's degree, and I was on my way, and I graduated. And I would say I became an average counselor, okay? I would say when I finished grad school, I was an average counselor. Why was I an average counselor? A lot of people who go into this field, they go with the best of intentions. They have a good heart. But we go with it with the idea that we're going to influence other people, right? We're going to inspire other people. We're going to tell people what to do. We're going to have the answers. We're going to be the almighty, right? So, and we come from a good place doing it. We want to impact other people. We want to make the world a better place. But we really think that we have the answers. And that was what made me average for who I was. And so, I was that way for a while. One day I had a real paradigm shift. I started to think about what everything was about and what my career was about. I started, instead of trying to inspire other people, I allowed other people to inspire me. That's a paradigm shift. When we as educators, as social service providers, start listening and trying to genuinely put ourselves in the experience and in the shoes of the people we work with, then the way that we approach things changes. Suddenly, we're not the experts, we're the listeners. That small paradigm change makes a big difference. We take listening for granted. It's something we all take for granted. Let me give you an example of that. I get coffee every single day. I lived in Oregon for 7 years. Coffee is in my bloodstream. I live by it. Every single morning I get coffee at the cafeteria. And there's a guy by the name of Edgardo who's been there just as long as me at COD and is an awesome guy. Every single day for a good 6, 7 years started exactly the same way. I would bring my coffee cup to Edgardo. Edgardo would say good morning. I would say good morning. Then he'd say it's $2. I'd give him $2. He'd say have a good day. I'd say you too. Every day for 7 years. Good morning, good morning. Here's the money. Have a good day. Have a good day, you too. Good morning, here's the money. Have a good day, you too. 7 years I do this. One day, good morning, here's the money. Got any plans this weekend? What do you think I say? You too. We don't listen, right? We don't listen, okay? We take communication for granted. We think we have all the answers, and that's where we start to make our mistakes. So I wanted to start to listen to the parents, listen to what the concerns are, listen to where the gaps were. And so that's how Autism America started. It started very informally 7 years ago. For those of you who don't know, Autism America is a social group that we have at the College page, and it started in the most informal of ways. I was meeting with a parent who had a young man who lived in a rural area, and she said, my son went to a school where nobody was like him. They made fun of him, they wouldn't play with him, and he never knew anyone who was like himself. I want him to meet people like himself. Can you help me? And so I thought about it, and I thought, that makes sense. So I decided to send a letter to all those students I knew who had self-identified on the spectrum. And I said, we're going to pick this day, and we're going to pick this time, and I have no idea what we're going to do, but I'd love it if you'd come and we can figure it out together. And mind you, I was really young when I did this, so you know when you're young, you do risky things and you don't think about them. So I sent the letter out, and then I totally freaked out and panicked, right? Because what if that night 2 people came? What a disaster that would have been. What if nobody came? How horrible would that be? And so then, as soon as the letter went out, I panicked and I got nervous. Day after day, time went slower and slower until the night that the first meeting came. That first night, we had probably 30 people. There were a lot of people there, and a lot of people who had a son or a daughter who grew up in a school where no one was like them, and they wanted to connect to other people who was like them. And one of the things I found out that I didn't expect, not only did the students want to be there, the parents wanted to be there. They needed it just as much as the students did. They wanted to talk to other parents about resources, about ideas, about doctors. They wanted to share all of that. And so everyone was there. And so I asked everyone, I said, well, you know, we're together, what do you want? And so the students said to me, well, we don't want anything therapeutic. We don't want any of this, you know, I'm okay, you're okay crap. We're sick of that, right? They didn't want that. They wanted to have fun. We just want to have fun and be ourselves. I said, okay, what do you like to do to have fun? Primarily, and for those of you who know someone on the spectrum knows this, number 1 was video games, right? So absolutely video games in a row. Some people said board games or pool or ping pong. Most everyone said video games. Well, we had no money in the budget, and video games aren't cheap. So I didn't know what to do, but I said, okay, let's meet again in a month and we'll figure it out then. And so, like I mentioned before, the beauty of community colleges, this is a good example of it. I sent an email out to everyone at COD. And I said, hey, you know, we want to form this group. We want to give students to have a chance to have fun. So if you've got an Xbox or a Wii that's, you know, just collecting dust because maybe your kid moved away or they don't play it anymore, we'll take it. And again, I sent it out and I thought, no one's going to respond. No one's going to donate. That next day, within 24 hours, I had so many video games. I had everything. I had more remotes than I could get in my drawers. Just tons of stuff. People donated by the dozen. And so great. So we had that. So at our second meeting, we laid out the video games. We laid out the TVs. The students loved it. They were in heaven and they started to have fun. And then we wanted the parents to give a chance to socialize. So we connected the parents to one another. And they started talking. And things started to come together. That was kind of when I like to think the magic happened. 7 years later, we still meet. We meet on a monthly basis. We have lots of students come. I would say meetings now average between 80 to 90 people. And we wanted it to be open to everyone. So not just students of COD, but anyone that was seeking out a connection. And so we have students who come from high schools, like here at Glenbard. We have students who come from other high schools. We have students who come from other universities. So we have students from Elmhurst and from Lewis, from North Central. We have our first graduate student, which I'm very proud of. We have one family that comes all the way from Northwest Indiana just to be a part of these meetings. Now I'd like to, oh, and by the way, the logo and the name was our students' creation. It was really important that it be theirs. So this logo was designed by a member of ours, Josh Romanek, who is still a member today, a graduate now, but still attends. And the name was named by a student by the name of Edward Reedy, who is also a regular attendee. So this was their organic creation. Now you might be curious, well, what do one of these meetings look like? So I'd like to show you.
Autism America is an organization for students on the autism spectrum to better educate themselves about COD and socialize with one another in a safe and supportive environment. CNTV reporter Alistair Lundy teaches us all about this amazing group.
Autism America is an organization for students on the autism spectrum. It focuses on student success and provides opportunities for students to socialize, educate themselves about COD, and most importantly, feel like they belong.
What's the most interesting thing you experienced here?
The fact that you can do so much. We've gone to outings, we play video games, you get to hang out with friends. It's a lot of fun.
Each meeting consists of a guest speaker on a specific topic, followed by social activities such as pool, board games, and video games.
We just did a Valentine's Day bake sale in February, and so we do bake sales, we do outings during the summer, to baseball games, feed my starving children sometimes, we've done that.
For 7 years, Autism America has provided fun social activities for students on the autism spectrum, as well as educational meetings for their parents to attend. Autism America has been so successful that the college has started several other programs for students with mild to moderate developmental disabilities, including the Reach Out program and specialized communication skills classes.
My son basically grew up not really connecting with a lot of folks. Not that he wasn't really unhappy about that per se, but this is an opportunity for him to meet with people that are like him, and he gets to do things that he likes to do. He looks forward to coming to Autism America.
Autism America is run by author and COD faculty member Michael Dugan, whose mission has always been to help COD students with disabilities succeed.
The idea started, we just celebrated our 7-year anniversary, so it started roughly 7 years ago. I was meeting with a mom, and she had a son that came from a rural area, and she said, you know, my son comes from a school, there's no one like him, and he would really love to meet other people like himself, so could you help with that? And I thought that was a really cool idea, so I sent a letter out to everyone I knew that was self-identified on the autism spectrum and said, we're going to pick a random date and a random time, and we'll all show up and see what happens.
Autism America meetings are held on the second Thursday of every month in SSC room 1200. Every meeting will include fun activities for students as well as a meeting for parents to attend. For more information, visit Autism America's page on the college website, visit their Facebook page, or email Michael Dugan at dugan@cod.edu. For Courier TV, I'm Alistair Lundy.
There's nothing worse than seeing yourself, like on TV. The only thing worse than that is seeing it on a screen that big. Like, wow, oh my. So anyways, so it's funny, for parents who are interested in this group, you can always tell whom are the new students, because usually at the first meeting or two, the parents are dragging the students. They don't want to be there, right? And they'll say things like, I don't want to be with other people like that. I'm not like that. I'm not that way. But then they meet people whom they have the exact same interests, who play the exact same games, who read the exact same anime, and watch the exact same movies. And by the second or third meeting, the students are starting to drag the parents, because now they want to be a part of it. Now what we do to build on that, we actually teach a class at the college with a colleague of mine, Cheryl Ebersol, on interpersonal communication skills for students on the spectrum. And so in that class, we work on teaching social skills and modeling them. And so then we have the students go to the Autism America meetings, and they model those skills. So now, not only are students having fun, but social skills are also happening, and it's a trickle-down effect from other students. I can teach a lot as a teacher, but if you learn it from a friend, it's a lot more powerful. And so that's what happens. The whole reason Autism America occurred, though, wasn't because of me. It was because I listened. It was that paradigm shift. It was allowing us to be inspired by the people we work with and acting and looking at the world they do. And through that inspiration, we can do things. And so now we have lots of fun. Not only do we meet monthly, we do outings in the community. We've gone to arcades, we've gone bowling, we've gone to baseball games and watched fireworks. We do all kinds of fun kind of things. And so it's really a great experience. We have a website if you'd like to see, and we have a Facebook page. It's not been updated the best, but it's there, I swear. But it's a really positive group, and again, it's listening. It's reacting and being inspired by others. Another group we started, the COD, that's on a similar vein, is Project Coach. Project Coach started in a very similar way. Project Coach specifically is a program for students with intellectual disabilities, which often students on the autism spectrum are a completely different group than this. But sometimes, one of the gaps that we noticed in the community, a parent was meeting with me, and she said, you know, I have a kid with an intellectual disability. He's functioning at probably a 70 IQ level. And he wants to just get trained to get a job. He knows he's not going to be able to transfer to university. He doesn't want to transfer to university. But the only training programs here in DuPage County at universities that cost $20,000 to $30,000 a year, which is a fact. So we wanted to develop a program that met those skills, that met the needs of those parents and students, so they could get the skills that they needed. And so hence Project Coach was born. One of the elements of Project Coach was we wanted to develop a
COD Buddies is a brand new organization here at the college that celebrates diversity and inclusion within our campus.
Well, the COD Buddies program is a program we developed for students with intellectual disabilities here at the college. And so we wanted to pair up the students as part of that program with students here in COD's larger community. And so we recruited from all around the campus.
While most of the mentors in COD Buddies are special education or psychology majors, the program is open to any student who wants to make a difference in the buddies' lives.
And the idea is that connecting students with a mentor gives them a chance to have an ambassador or someone to do student life activities with.
These are students who really want to make a difference in other people's lives. We have the best group of mentors who are working with the students.
When Julie, one of the buddies in the program, made a special request, COD Buddies made sure it happened.
One of the buddies, she loved the experience so much, she asked if she could have a second mentor. And we thought about it, and we thought, well, sure, why not? And now the three of them work together, and she loves it. It's like she's getting twice the help and twice the encouragement.
Mike Duggan, he was a counselor here, and then he tried to put people together who fit well, and I got very lucky.
We got to see Julie in a choir concert here at COD, and it was just a great experience.
So it was kind of nice to have them cheer me on.
Not only are these buddy and mentor relationships, these are true friendships.
We get to hang out every Wednesday. It's just fun to talk about stuff, and we love going to Starbucks. It's our favorite place.
We can all get together. If the buddies have questions, they can come talk to the mentors, and we're always there for them, so we're able to help them whenever they need help.
It's a wonderful, awesome experience.
We know that the relationships that form from these programs often go beyond graduation. These become lifetime relationships.
And I think being in a relationship with a student who has an intellectual disability is just a mind-opening experience, and it's also very fulfilling because they're really, they're very caring and happy and great to be around.
COD is awesome and it's really fantastic.
Okay, so again, nothing magical really, but again, it's listening. It's allowing ourselves to be inspired by others and reacting to that. So, let's get to the heart of what we're here to talk about, and that's my book, because I want to sell copies, right? Sure. No, actually, I only get 7%, so that's like a lot of time. But anyways, I do want to talk about the book, and why did I write? I was not the type of person I thought I could write a book. Okay, I was a Joe Average student growing up, and you know, I had goals and dreams, but I thought, oh, only really smart people, only people with expertise and who are eloquent and special can write books. And someone close to me challenged me one day. They said, well, why don't you just start writing? Why don't you see what happens? And so I started writing what I knew. Started writing about the experiences that I got working with students. started writing about what I thought education would be about. And so I thought I should write it like an IKEA manual, right? Like, isn't IKEA the best? Don't you freaking love IKEA? It's like you can, like, in 3 steps with lots of smiley faces, you can build like a 10-drawer entertainment system, right? It's like the best. So I started to write it, or if I do it, it's usually more like this, because I don't follow instructions well. But I decided I was going to try to write a book. And so I wanted to write a book like an instruction manual. Something that would help parents, something that would help educators, and give them easy-to-read tips on how to work with students and help them be more successful. And something so parents would know, here are the things to look for, and here's how education can make a difference. And so I'm going to read some passages from this, and hopefully some of them resonate with you. And so I'm going to start with the first being what I call my first failure. And I started my first chapter with that because I think education begins with humility. We approach it with an eagerness to learn and grow from the people we work with. So let me read this and see if perhaps you connect. My first year on the job, I met with a student named Harry and his father. I was fresh out of graduate school, and although I certainly had read about autism and passed many examinations on the topic, as almost anyone in the therapeutic profession will tell you, there's a big difference between studying a diagnosis in a textbook and encountering it in the real world. For my first meeting with Harry, he demonstrated an extremely negative and angry attitude. And to me, his father seemed equally enthusiastic and pessimistic. Harry had messed up hair, an unappealing body odor, and a Transformers shirt on that had seen far better days. As I asked questions about Harry and what he liked to do, or who he was as a person, I got one-word responses like, okay, and yeah, and nope. Harry also clearly did not want to be in the office with me that day, and was perfectly okay with his father doing all the talking. Harry's father looked tired, better dressed than his son, but tired. He would also get upset whenever Harry didn't give a complete answer to a question or gave me one that was off topic. Harry's father explained that these behavioral issues often carried over to the classroom, and that Harry frequently interrupted his instructors to ask questions that were unrelated to the classwork or so highly advanced that they demonstrated he had a better grasp of the subject than the instructor themselves. Of course, this audacity caused problems for Harry. Harry's father asked in the school administrators if he could attend class with him, to intervene when Harry was inappropriate and correct him. Now, I knew from Section 504 and other laws that this is not considered a reasonable accommodation request, and so I immediately went on the defensive. Well, how would this be fair to the other students? What about other people? How would other people think? What if there aren't enough desks? I fell into a trap that a lot of educators fall into. Rather than looking into the problem itself and brainstorming a solution to it, we invest our energy in shooting down the parent's idea. This turns the relationship into an adversarial one, where the parent feels unheard, the student feels invisible, and the provider becomes exhausted. It's an approach that will almost always lead to failure. Today I approach those problems differently, and let me talk about why. You see, the thing with Harry's father was he didn't want to go to class. I mean, he didn't want to go and sit in class with his son, but Harry's father didn't know what to do. He was desperate. He was looking for help. We as educators, if we approach things thinking we know the answers, we put all of our energy shooting the parents down and saying that's a bad idea. But that's not what it's about. It's about trying to find a solution. It's about Harry's father wanting someone to spend the time to get to know his son, to start to know what to do. We have to listen as educators. We have to allow ourselves to look at the world through the students we work with eyes. And from there, we can start to find solutions. I want to read another. Lost my clicker. This is from a chapter I call The Phantom Success Story. Take Aiden, a charming young man who is also on the handsome side. I think conventional good looks can sometimes work against some adults on the spectrum, and people tend to overlook the significance of their symptoms, at least early on. Aiden had a pleasant personality, and would smile when it was appropriate, and did a good job managing eye contact. Although upon closer examination, you could see it tended to follow a formulaic pattern that often higher functioning Asperger's adults rely on. Aiden wanted to go into the computer industry, and had the loves of many adults on the spectrum have. Video games, science fiction, anime. In terms of high school performance, Aiden also seemed well equipped for success. He had a C to B grade point average, decent ACT scores, and all kinds of positive comments ran in his IEP documentation. It seemed like Aiden would have little to no problem succeeding in college and would do great. But once Aiden started college, things began to break down. While he was able to live at home with his family, which proved convenient, homework assignments were often late and completed inappropriately, with a rush tone to them. Examination grades were low. Attendance was good overall, although he was often late to class. It's interesting to note that none of these details were discovered until near the end of Aiden's first semester, because whenever anyone asked Aiden how things were going, he would report back, great. And in his mind, he truly thought he was in good academic shape. He certainly wasn't lying or being distrustful about his work, because he was working from a different definition of what academic success was, one that worked against his new college environment. So we see lots of students like Aiden in college. They're ones that in high school they do great, right? They're smart, they're usually very smart, and they have the skills that they can buy without doing homework, and they can take tests well, and so they don't need anything very much in high school to get through it. But college becomes different. In college, the tables change. Examinations usually play a higher part of the grade, and they're usually more detail-oriented. So listening to the lectures alone isn't good enough. Homework is often a big part of the grade too. And so if Aiden is not used to doing homework, or is used to rushing through his homework on the school bus for 10 seconds, because he's really smart, he doesn't know how to devote 3 hours writing a paper. And so what happens is students like Aiden think they're doing great until the grades show. And then what happens? Everyone around Aiden thinks he's a failure. Nobody understands. It's so important in high school that we prepare students for that transition. If you have children who are in high school, they should be doing homework. They should be preparing for exams. Even if they don't need much time, you need to teach them to learn to develop that structure, because otherwise, when they get to college, students can fall through the cracks. And then they blame themselves, and that's the worst thing we want to do. Because it isn't Aiden's fault it's failing, it's our fault because we're not preparing them properly for that transition. I wanted to better understand from a student's perspective what college is like. And so I interviewed lots of students and I asked them, what was that experience about? And so this is from chapter 14, what students on the spectrum want us to know. I asked a student of mine, Susan, what she wanted non-spectrum adults to know about her. She said immediately she's capable of much more than people think she is. This is a common initial response I found to that question, and reflects an inner pride, so I was really pleased to hear that. Still, I told Susan I wanted a deeper understanding of what her day-to-day life was like. The world is so noisy, she said. Everyone and everything is trying to get your attention. There's always something flashing, or something in place, or something that's making a lot of racket. And people expect you to make eye contact with them. I don't understand what the big deal is about this. They see seeing someone's eyes is like seeing into their soul or something like that. But is it really? If I have to do something that makes me uncomfortable, how is this proving anything about our connection to one another? I know a lot has been written about eye contact, but I like the way she explained it from her point of view. It goes back to the question to ask, what are the appropriate social rules for communication? And if the goal of social interaction is really for people to understand one another, why does eye contact matter? She continued, growing up was hard for me because it seemed like a lot of the things I cared about other people didn't. And they would get annoyed or make fun of me because I preferred talking to adults because at least they understood me or pretended to understand. This comment speaks to another point I often heard from parents. Their children tended to prefer talking to adults rather than other classmates. And they preferred being alone much of the time in a way to avoid the stresses of social expectations. I asked another student, Jose, the very same question about what that was like for him. He said I had a counselor in high school who asked me to rate on a 1 to 10 scale how upset I was. I would always say 10 to almost everything, and the counselor would laugh at me and say the situation was really more of a 2 or a 3. But he can say this because he doesn't have to live life like I do. The stress to me is a 10, and even if it isn't to him, a 10 is a 10, and so what? His point reminded me that the stress we react to everything is subjective. Even though Even though he had the coping skills, every situation might have been a 10 to him. And who are we to judge what that is? It's so important we listen to our students. We don't pass judgment. We don't try to teach them the values we have to view things, and instead we try to genuinely be them for them. So now I want to talk a little bit about parents and some of the things that I wish parents and students knew, because I know this is a primarily parent type of thing. So I want to share a couple examples of things that are the wrong things I think to do, and then we're going to focus on the right things. And by the way, all of you, by being here tonight, that's one of the right things. And I'm not just saying this because I'm scared and I was worried no one was going to come tonight, but thank you. So here's a couple examples. I acknowledge parental involvement is a critical factor to student success. In the traditional higher education model, keeping parents out of the equation as much as possible is considered a critical element from the transition to adulthood. For students on the autism spectrum, however, these lines are blurrier. Throughout the book, I've tried to show how parents can serve an integral role and can be the best advocates for their children. In fact, I've come to learn that in many cases, parental participation is essential. It's only the degree of the participation that really is what's important. I remember meeting with a student, Abe, and his father. I knew Abe had a disability, but I didn't know the details, and so I asked Abe my standard question when I first meet with students. What's your disability? Tell me how it impacts you. Abe's dad quickly interrupted. We don't like to use the word disabilities. Abe has some slight limitations and learns differently, but I wouldn't go so far as to call it a disability. I then proceeded to ask Abe the question again. I said, tell me more about how you learn, how you think. Aiden said to me, I have an IEP. My disability is an IEP. That's all I really know. I was saddened to hear how many students would say that they wouldn't even know their disability diagnosis. They'd only know they're on an IEP and not even know what it's about. Parents may think that they're trying to protect their children or hide or minimize a disability, but this perceived form of protection can be often misguided. By covering up the truth about the way a person learns, the parent sends the child into the world where only the child's imagination can fill in the blanks. And this imagination tends to fill it with a much worse diagnosis. I'm a big fan of a theorist by the name of Harlan Hahn. And Harlan Hahn said that from a disability perspective, the more a person in an educational arena can view their disability as a trait of whom they are, like their height, or their hair color, or their weight, or their ethnicity, the more comfortable and the more in touch with it they get, and the more inner pride in themselves they develop. And indeed, this was the case I would find. Those students who could articulate to me, well, I have a hard time listening to lectures, I have a hard time focusing, or, well, organizational skills are really rough for me, I'm not able to get my homework done on time. Those are the students that tend to be successful. The ones that would say, well, I have an IEP and I know nothing else about that. Those were the ones that tended to fall through the cracks. Here's another example. Here's what I would consider the worst case scenario for a new student. First, the student doesn't want to be present at the meeting. They're irritated that this obligation has taken them away from their precious video gaming time, and they'd rather be surfing the internet. The student wants to get back to that preferred activity as quickly as possible. Second, the parent does all the talking for the student at the meeting. John wants to get his degree and transfer to university, the parent will say. But when I ask John what he wants to do, he'll say, I guess. Also, the student has had no work experience, other than perhaps a mock work experience in high school. That really wasn't much of an experience at all, where standards weren't held very high. It's really more of a way to fill up the day, rather than develop work skills. In this worst case scenario, the student often appears to be someone who has lots of chances of succeeding, but they're not interested in succeeding. The grades are C's or passing. The ACTs scores are on the decent side. IEPs are filled out positive with lots of comments about how great the student is, but little mention about their capacity to handle work, manage themselves, or what they want to do with their lives. When I see this combination, I'm concerned, and it's a red flag often that the student was passed on from school with heavy parental involvement doing homework. Parents, oh, by the way, homework. Often parents would say they would do the homework themselves. The absolute worst thing you do is do your children's homework. There's a difference between helping and doing it for them. When you do it for them, you're not giving them the opportunity to learn. Give them the chance to fall. Give them the chance to stand. Let them do the work. So that's like the negative step. But let's go into the good stuff, the positive stuff. What are some of the elements of success? What are some of the things that I see for those students that tend to be the most successful? And so let's talk about that. Some of the themes that I tend to see are students who have a sense of some type of understanding of their diagnosis, even on the most basic of level. They have some ability to self-advocate. Again, even on the most basic of level. This doesn't mean you have to give an articulate explanation of your diagnostic learning disability test scores or what types of testing was determined that you're Asperger's. But on a basic level, be able to say things like, I don't understand, or I need help, or I don't like this. An ability to succeed in education with classes that are homework and exam-based. If your kid is not doing homework, if your kid is not taking exams, they're going to struggle in college. So make sure those things are happening, and make sure your child gets into a habit of doing homework on a regular basis, even if it's just 20 minutes a night, so they know that's always part of their educational experience. Some type of work experience, either paid or volunteer. That's important. That gives them the sense of what's going to happen after college. I mean, for most of us nowadays, we like to be all philosophical and think that college is about learning, but it's also about being able to live independently. And an important element about that is work. So the sooner you can introduce them to the experience, the better. A desire to continue education on some level. That is so important. If a parent wants the kid to be there more than the kid wants to be there, they are going to work real hard to prove them wrong, okay? They have to be part of the equation. And if they're not, take time off. Focus on a work experience. I've had students who will take a year off. They work at McDonald's, they work at Walmart. Everything changes. That work experience can give you such perspective. Minimal involvement of parents in completing homework. One more. Some ability to do homework is successfully independent, and minimal involvement of parents in doing homework. Again, homework is so very important. Structure is so very important. I'm such a fan of structure, and not just for young adults over the spectrum, but for myself too. You know, I have to tell myself I have to turn the PlayStation off at 10 p.m. Or if I do, I'm not going to get up for work the next day, right? We all do better by structure, so live by that. An ability to monitor their degree of gaming and technology use. I got once the opportunity to have lunch with Temple Grandin, whom, if you don't know, is a very famous person who's on the spectrum. And I asked Dr. Grandin, I said, Dr. Grandin, who is one of my idols, what is the one thing we as educators need to be concerned about in helping prepare young adults on the spectrum for their futures? What is the one thing that concerns you the most? And she said to me, without a doubt, it's video games and technology. It's addictive. She went to Japan. She visited some of the video game companies. Do you know they literally, when they test out video games, they hook up neurotransmitters to testers to measure the amount of neurological response to sound effects, to impacts, determine what is the thing that has the greatest impact? This stuff is addictive. And technology and video games, and again, I'm a gamer, so I'm not a hater. Don't hate if there's any. I love to game. I love my Super Mario. But it can be addictive. And hours. I will have students who will ask me, how long do you play video games? And they'll say 8, 10 hours. Think about that. We tend to think it's benign because it's technology, but if we put that in the same degree, other things that can be addictive. If you said, I drink 8 hours a day, I smoke 10 hours a day, you'd freak out. But we say, oh, I watch YouTube videos 10 hours a day. And we think, no big deal, right? It's an addiction like any other. So certainly technology is part of our world. I love technology, but it has to be something else that can be self-monitored and controlled. Having a parent with a realistic understanding, expectation of their child's abilities, strengths, and deficits. And I believe every student has all of that. We all have strengths we bring to the table. We all have weaknesses we bring to the table. The more insight we have, the better we can be. And finally, a parental openness continuing to be involved in their children's education. It's funny, in higher ed, some people will say philosophically you should close the door on parents. They're adults now. They got to stand their own 2 feet. I don't live in that camp. I do think the door has to start to close. This is the time when the door should start closing, but it can't close completely. But if a parent isn't willing to be involved at all, and that child is on their own, they're going to have a tough time. So we want openness from parents, but we also want a willingness to let go a little bit too. There's a poem in my book, and I'm not much of a poet. I remember in college we had to write a poem once for an English course, and I did mine in the bathroom, and I called it Ode on a Commode. You know, I'm not a poet. But I really, in speaking with the parents, and I'm inspired by so many parents through Autism America, and so many from the work I do, and some of you are here tonight, and I love you so much for being here. I wrote a poem. I made an attempt at a poem, so hopefully it might mean something to you. There's no greater job I can do than be the best possible parent I can to my child. To that effect, I'll always work hard to encourage love, independence, happiness, safety, security, communication, no matter on what level, understanding, intellectual development, challenge, growth, relationships, skills, values, identity, confidence, and freedom. I also recognize to do my part in achieving these goals, I must also take care of myself as a parent. Therefore, I must turn to myself and to those I trust to help me develop love, independence, happiness, safety, security, communication, no matter what level, understanding, intellectual development, challenge, growth, relationships, skills, values, identity, confidence, and freedom. I am strong, but I cannot do this job alone. It is okay to ask others for help. It is okay to take care of myself. It is okay to express my needs to the world. Even the strongest of trees cannot shelter its own roots if it does not seek water to grow. I am human and I am enough. My love is strong and shall always flourish. Parents have to take care of themselves, and I know that's so hard to do because you feel like you're being selfish to your children in doing that. But you need the nurturance, you need the encouragement, you need the support. Again, that's why groups like Autism America I so believe in, because the parents are there for each other too. You are not alone in this, and it's okay to ask for help. I'm going to go into the last section of my presentation, which is what makes a good counselor. Remember, this book was for educators and for counselors alike. So I wanted to write a little bit for people whom, if they're brave enough to go in this field, that would want to, and what makes a good counselor. So from my perspective, this is what I think makes a good counselor, or a good educator. So a humanistic or person-centered approach is critical. Those students whom often feel misunderstood by the secondary system, particularly with its labels or other educational systems and how they may fall, can cause an instinct that makes teens to distrust the world and other older adults. Because autism entails such a broad spectrum of functioning, students may struggle with their identity and how it fits with their diagnosis. They may see lower functioning students struggling with learning basic concepts and feel frustrated because they don't identify with those other students. And they may see higher functioning students performing advanced trigonometry and not identify with them either. Students can easily feel lost in today's system. They will often say that ours is a different generation and that we don't understand what it's like to be young today. And they're right. Quite honestly, I don't know if I could survive puberty if I had to do it all over again in this era of social media, overabundance of false information, and seemingly endless ways to get in trouble through the negative influences of drug, alcohol, and dangerous substances. So how do we as counselors and educators establish a relationship with our students? We make some respectful assumptions. We assume that although we're well-trained in our discipline, we cannot possibly understand what it's like to be this person on this day in these times experiencing these disabilities. We also assume that every person truly wishes to be heard and understood, and it is our responsibility as educators to genuinely express interest and commitment in a way that someone of today's younger generation can understand. Finally, we assume that we'll always be honest and forthright with our views, whether the person likes it or not. And we'll share this honesty always with the intent of helping the person move forward, never to put them down or make them feel small or less. We have to be genuine, we have to be honest, we have to be there for our students. My last kind of thing, and this was just kind of a self-indulgent thing I put at the end of the book, because one of the nice things if you write a book is you get to end it how you want, you know? It's kind of like you get to order your dessert. So I just wanted to put some tips for higher success in higher education in life. And so these are what I would consider the tips for anyone in education. But you know, the more I think about it, it's really for anybody. I think these are tips that anyone can live off of and find happiness and joy in their work and educational life. Always appreciate, always thank people for what they do. Look for gaps in services. You have a unique perspective if you're an educator, one that no one else has. So look for those gaps. Look for the things that are missing and try to build things in their place. Seek out opportunities to work outside of your department. The more you work with other people, the more you learn about how the institution on a larger scale is. Be the listener, not the talker. The people who are most respected in education are the ones who listen. Never take interruptions with students unless absolutely necessary. Ignore the phone, ignore the email. They'll wait. They're not going anywhere. Never let important ideas be forgotten, even if it takes years for them to come to fruition. Project Coach took us 5 years to get off of the ground. That's okay. If you have something you believe in, keep bringing it up. Keep mentioning it at meetings. Keep encouraging people to open their eyes and try something out. Remember, students need genuine personal connections. It's funny, we read all this stuff about Generation X and Y and Z and Q and L and NOP, and it always makes me giggle. Things don't really change. Students want to feel connected to somebody. They want to feel like someone cares about them. Focus on ways to communicate that, and whether they're Generation X, T squared, you'll be fine. The hardest people are on the front lines, and usually the hardest working and least appreciated ones out there. That's so true in education. Those people who work the front desk, those people who answer the phones, they have such a hard job. They're right on the fire line. Appreciate them, know their names, show them how important they are. Remember, students are the best job if you're doing a good job. I remember when I was early in my field, I was really trying to make a good impression on this new dean that was at my college. And so I was working really hard, and I was sending emails really late, and I was trying to show off. And I asked her one day, I said, am I doing a good job? Am I doing a good job? And I was sure she was going to say, oh, you're fantastic. And she said, because that's what young people do, right? Young people are fantastic. And so she said to me, the only person who can tell you if you're doing a good job are the students you work with. That's so true. That's so true. They're the ones who determine if you're doing a good job. Don't be afraid to bend the rules or buck the system a little. So there always needs to be creative solutions. It's okay. Be polite, but it's okay. Laugh more and worry less. Think about all the time we spend worrying and how useless it is. Laugh more. Family and loved one first. It's good to have passion for your job. It's good to love your job. I love my job. I'm passionate about it. But we also have to remember part of being passionate is being able to take care of everyone that we love. And if we can't take care of this part of our life, we can't take care of this part of our life. Work-life balance is so important. Be there for your job. Be there for the ones you love at home. Don't take everything so serious and calm that, and I'll let you put your favorite swear word in there down. So I tend to like to swear too. It's a bad habit. But we take things so serious in education. We don't need to be, okay? Smile, relax. And finally, if you don't love what you're doing, quit, please. We all have been in jobs where we know the one person who's just counting the days to retirement or is just waiting to get out the door. And what? Those are usually the ones we respect the least. Our lives are short. All of our lives are short. If you're not loving what you do, you owe it to yourself and the students you work with to find something better that you can find joy out of. Okay, so that's really all I have. I thought at this point I would just open it up to questions, if you have any. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah. Oh, and I have a microphone if you need it, but we'll see if we can do without it. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So, as an educator, is it a problem to ask a student if they can help us help them by giving us information about their disability?
That's a good question. Did everyone hear that okay? Okay. So if you did, question was, is it okay for educators to ask other students about their disabilities? Here's my take of it. Everything is about the intent, right? If you go up to someone right and they say, do you have a disability? What's wrong with you? Okay? And I know you wouldn't do that. You're so nice. So that shuts the person down. But if we come from a perspective of saying, you know, I've noticed you're struggling in class, and I want to help you. Tell me more about your educational history. What were some of the things that happened for you in high school? You know, did you get any kind of services? Did you have extra time, for example? Tell me a little bit about what your history was like. That becomes a more comfortable way for the student to talk about it. And they may never even say they have a disability. They may just say, I had extra time or I need help. But it makes a more comfortable way for them to talk about that need. Other questions? Yeah.
As an educator and a parent with a technology addicted it's hard to pull it away because they do use it for their school. You know, they're referring back and forth from the computer and going, okay, yeah, but there's all the other times. And it's almost a connection to the world for a kid on the spectrum.
Right.
So that also makes it hard to pull away. Any suggestions?
It's about understanding the use of the technology, and I absolutely agree with you. And there are some ways that technology can be wonderful for young adults on the spectrum. There are chat boards where they can connect to other people. So there are resources. So there are lots of good. So I am not poo-pooing technology. It's the way that it's used. And sometimes it requires heavier parental involvement at times. You can look at a screen usually and get a sense if the person is interacting with things to benefit or if they're just watching videos or if they're killing things on a screen. And so it's trying to help them balance that, you know? And so saying, okay, we're going to have fun technology time and we're going to have learning technology time. Fun technology time, we're going to dedicate 2-3 hours. That's it. Learning technology time, use it as you need to. So watching the screen will give you a sense of that. And asking, you know, trying to have genuine conversation. What did you do the last hour on your laptop, you know? And one thing I love about young adults on the spectrum is they'll usually be very honest with you. They'll say, you know, I spent an hour watching trains blow up, you know? They'll tell you that, which is great. So trying to help them teach that there's a difference between learning versus fun. Yeah.
Social skills.
Yeah.
Do you teach that class?
I do.
Can you give us 3 pointers to share with parents on social skills?
Social skills. For parents, what they should teach their children,
yes.
You mean? I think one, teaching your children that who you are is who you are, and that's great, okay? Don't feel like you have to fit in other people's boxes of what normal is or what expectations are. I think two, try to make statements that show that you understand the person's perspective. Often young adults on the spectrum struggle with this. We know this, right? And so they don't know if they show understanding. So practicing ways so they can reflect that. So making statements back, showing that they understand, I think can be really helpful. And I think the third thing is seek out opportunities to make friends. You know, so many students, I'll have parents call me and they'll be like, my kid just stays at home all day. He doesn't want to leave his bedroom. That's all he wants to do. They got to leave the bedroom. They got to interact. And going to things like Autism America, and I know I sound like I'm a used car salesman for that. There are lots of other good groups out there, but finding ways that they connect to other people is so important. Because what happens is when they find there are other people in the real world who have the same interests that they do, now they feel more comfortable interfacing with it, and leaving that bedroom is less scary.
Is there anything special about eye contact that you...
You know, I mean, there's within eye contact, you know, there's the social rules and then there's the us rules, okay? Social rules say, you know, when you're meeting strangers, people expect eye contact, okay? I disagree with it, but it is. And so teaching them, well, that's expectation. But when you're with friends and family, when you're with people comfortable, telling them, if you don't feel like making eye contact, that's okay, you know? You want your child to communicate in the way that they feel comfortable communicating to you. They have to know the outside world isn't going to get it like they do sometimes, and they need to know that, but you want them to know that your home is a place they can be themselves. Up there and then over there, yeah.
In this vein, do you have many students that show up for your Autism America that are minimally verbal?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
Minimally
that.
verbal.
Minimally verbal.
Oh, yes, we do. So, that's a good question. So, one of the things about Autism America, is that one of the things we really try hard to do, I have a co-facilitator here's in the room, and we usually have a third facilitator who hopefully will join us if I can con him into being a third facilitator. So we try to match students up on similar functioning level, right? Because the goal is for them to make friends. So very early on, we're introducing, but we are running around like it's a gigantic event, and we're assessing where our students' skill level's at, and we're trying to match them up with other students with similar skill levels. And certainly we do have some students who are nonverbal. One of the things we've noticed in some of the students is they become more verbal because of the meetings. One of the gentlemen in the video that was playing pool, if you recall, the first probably year or two, he would only play pool with his dad. That was it. And he would not talk to anyone. He would not interact with anyone. Now, he's playing pool with other people. He's playing ping pong with other people. And he's making short sentences. That's not to say it might happen for your son, but certainly we have students who verbalization is a challenge, and we try to match them with other students. Over here.
I have a child coming into COD next year. How do they kind of transition to college, and what do you recommend? Do you meet with them, someone on your staff? How does it?
Sure. So the question was, how if someone wants to go to COD specifically, how do they do that? The ideal in a perfect world, first off, that planning, those conversations are happening around the junior year, okay? By the senior year, they can start by meeting with myself, and we'll sit down and talk about what their goals are. Remember from my presentation, we want to make sure they want to be there, okay? If they don't want to be here, they don't want to be here, okay? But assuming that they do, then we start talking about planning. We determine placement tests. We look at ACT scores if they take the ACT, and we also encourage them to start coming to Autism America if they're comfortable, because then they can make friends early on. And so we often have high school seniors who will come to those meetings. So by their first day of college, they already know 3 or 4 people. So planning ahead is critical. I would say if your child, let's say, is hypothetically planning to be here in August 2019, right? Yeah, 2019, that first meeting where we start planning should happen sometime in early January or February. Okay, over here and then over there.
Along the same lines with entry COD, what range of students, ability-wise, do COD accept, and what type of modifications or placement tests?
Sure. The questions were, what type of students does COD accept, and what type of combinations and modifications do we do? First off, as a community college, everyone is accepted. There's not an application process, so anyone is welcome. We have courses starting with, like I mentioned, Project Coach, so I would say in terms of intellectual functioning, those courses go as low as reading and writing at a first grade level. So certainly on that lower end of the spectrum, if there, we have non-credit courses they can do. And then they go all the way, obviously, to college age level too. So they can go anywhere far and in between. Now, one of the differences between college and high school is modification versus accommodation, however. In high school, modifications can be put in place. Perhaps the student does fewer chapters, or they have modified exams. In college, everyone takes the same test. Everyone does the same homework. And so the student has to meet that expectation. So one of the things I often suggest, if your child is one that they're capable of succeeding without modification, don't have modifications, because it's not going to happen in college. And then when they get to college, they're frustrated. So that's one thing. But then in terms of skill levels, we have most everything. We have non-credit classes and independent living skills. We have certificate programs and things like welding and computers that don't require math or reading or writing. So we have lots of different offerings. The key is really to get to know the student as soon as possible so we can start to look and see what programs are the best match for them. Okay, over here.
When and where is the Autism America meetings?
Oh my God, I didn't mention that.
No.
Bless you, Claire. God bless you. So we meet the second Thursday night of each month, and actually our meeting for this month is this Thursday, so in 2 days. If you can't make it this month, though, we'll meet again next October, and it's usually the second Thursday, so it's October 11th. We put all of it on our website, so if you go to our website, or you just Google Autism America, the dates, but it's normally the second Thursday night of each month. We meet at 7 p.m., and we meet in the Student Services Center, room 1200. It's this gigantic room. You don't have to register ahead of time. You don't have to pay. You can show up. You can not show up. Parents are very welcome, but if the student doesn't want parents involved, that's okay too. It's whatever works. We're usually done around 8:30, although often we find we have to start shutting down the video game systems because they'll just kill things till the TV dies. Yeah, you're done.
Is that group open to all students, or you mentioned seniors coming in that group?
It's open, we really wanted our group to be open to anyone, so it's open to anyone. I think in terms of age range, I think probably our younger students are 16, so younger than 16, they may not fit in, but they're welcome. I think other end of the age range, we have students that are in their 30s and 40s. One of the really cool things is now we have students who have graduated and they're in their later 20s and they still come to the meetings. They still want to be a part. And what's really cool is now they're kind of role models, right? They see someone else who's succeeded and they want to become a computer programmer and live independent. So it's open anyway.
What would that look like if my 17-year-old came the very first time? What would you do to kind of, you said like 80 people, or how big is this? And have you put in small groups?
It varies on the night. I would say usually 60, 70, 80, it varies. What we try to, we always encourage new families to come talk to myself or Cheryl. Cheryl, say hello. This is the queen bee, by the way. I'm just the entertainment. I'm just, I'm the Vanna White of the group. It's not nice. But what we do is we encourage new families to come. And right away we want to meet with them and get a sense of what they do. And we'll ask a few questions to get a little bit of a sense of who they are. Obviously it's not scientific. But we'll ask things like, what do you like to do? Where do you have fun? What do you do? Sometimes new students, they just want to stay close to their parents, and that's fine, But what we'll try to do is try to get them away from the parents and find someone with a similar interest and match them up. And then that's when they start doing things. Does it work 100% of the time? No. We try really hard. I would say a lot of the time it does, but sometimes it takes a few meetings to make it stick. But often, if we find the right video game and the right interests, that can happen pretty quick. Yeah?
I have a question. Goals like enunciation, greater expressive language, clarity of speech, is that more of a speech therapy type of curriculum, or does your socialization class or classes here at COD offer that?
That's a good question. So the question was primarily things centered around diction and pronunciation. Yeah. So the class I teach does not center on that. We want students to communicate the way that they feel comfortable. We do actually have classes through our theater department on diction and voice, so that's something they can do. We often have students who they want to be voiceover artists. Do you hear this one? Yeah. So another interesting, CUD, we have an animation program, and interesting, often students with the spectrum go into animation, so we have a big population because of that. So within the class itself, we don't work on those things, but we do work on establishing understanding. So if someone is talking in a way that other students don't understand, we try to work with everyone in the class to make sure they can reach a point of mutual understanding. Yeah?
I'm not sure this question really has an answer. Kids that are high functioning and that are university bound.
Yeah.
No IEP. I know a couple of them. Would it behoove them, or would it hold them back during the application process to get an IEP?
You mean in high school to get one?
Well,
is that your question?
In
or?
high school, but before they apply for college, is that something that would help or hinder?
Well, it depends on what the needs are, I would guess. If the student is, from an accommodation standpoint, the accommodations that most students qualify in higher ed are things like having extra time for tests, having books on tape, assistive technology. If those are things that your child would benefit from, then yes, it's good to have some type of documentation so they're able to get that. If those are needs that they don't have, they might not need that. They might not need that documentation. They still might need to have a connection to the institution. And so that's where the college's counseling center can come in. And so they can meet with a counselor to talk about, often students like that struggle with organizational skills. So talking about how to work with the tutoring center and the counseling center, those are things that could be helpful. But those are services for all students at the college. So whether you have a disability or not, they can benefit from that.
Okay. I'm thinking of one, it seems to be very organized, gets things done. The other seems to be quite brilliant, but has a hard time with organization. Doesn't get a lot of things done. They're both going through, I assume, the application process now. I'm talking to parents. But neither of them has actually been diagnosed, but it's pretty clear, they probably have Asperger's.
Sure.
That's oxymoron. Pretty clear that they probably have. I'm 98% sure.
Well, from an admissions standpoint, actually colleges aren't allowed to ask if a student has a disability. So
Does not appear anywhere on
yeah,
the
so it becomes a moot point from that perspective anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
kind of tied in exactly with what she said.
Oh, okay.
I'm on the other end of it because I teach as an adjunct in COD, and I have 3 students this semester. We had 4 that Michael and I worked with a couple semesters ago that were definitely on a spectrum somewhere. I knew it because I could tell by their answers, the way they acted, their social skills, but I couldn't ask.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't want to get help because they were independent and they're in college now and they're not going to say anything to their dads. And I failed 2 of them because it made me horrible, felt horrible.
So basically the best thing to do is if I wanted my son to go in, we counsel and we let you all know where he's at.
Yeah, it's funny, when we look at the research of young adults transitioning to college, we know about 55% of them choose not to self-disclose their disability. So over half of them don't ask for help. And a lot of them fail out. So it's good. The reason why they don't, by the way, is because the fear of being labeled. They're scared that everyone's going to know, and everyone's going to know they're different. College is very different. We take confidentiality extremely seriously. So if a student does have a disability, that's completely confidential.
But I like the fact that you are, let's not hide it. 'Cause I don't hide my sons.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to speak and say he's high functional autistic, and then as a writer I will say, I'm autistic. But I've never really hid it because it's obvious.
Good.
You know, so that's something I learned tonight, that, at least I was doing something that's, I guess, right.
That's great. And we have one more students who they're proud they're on the spectrum. Have you all heard the term neurotypical? I love it. The idea is, who's to say that people not on the spectrum are the ones that don't have disabilities, and maybe we're messed up in the way we see the world? The older I get, the more I think that's the case. So yeah, I think it's great they take pride in that. It's part of who they are. Yeah.
How do you best prepare Asperger's kids for the PSATs when they're really not great about doing homework and they really don't have strong organizational skills, and we're working on it now, but he's a junior in high school and we're kind of we got the diagnosis late. I'm his grandmother and I've now got him, and so I'm coming into this with a bit of a disability.
Sure. Well, the PSAT in and of itself, honestly, I don't know very much about it because we don't require it at community colleges. But I can answer your question, well, how do we help students prepare? Again, structure is so important. Letting them know that there's going to be a consistent, dedicated time each night on the weeknights that they're going to be doing homework. And letting them know they're going to do something. If they have no homework to do, they're going to be doing math problems, prepare for the PSAT. Or they're going to be doing analogies, right? Or they may be doing definitions. It should always be a consistent scheduled time. And so then when they make it to college, they know there's going to be a consistent scheduled time they do homework.
Thank you.
Yeah, up here.
From a gen ed teacher perspective,
Yeah.
in a high school classroom, I know you mentioned many ways that parents need to be involved in the homework process, but from a teacher perspective, is there any recommendation of how we can better facilitate students being successful in the 48 minutes that I see them each day, about promoting self-advocacy for themselves or completing work?
Trying to process that question. That was a good one. So what can we do as teachers to help students be more successful?
Specifically from like a gen ed standpoint of, I'm only with them 48 minutes a day.
I think, one, having homework assignments, even if they're small, to follow up with them, giving them feedback on what their performance is, and then trying to spend some time with them. And I know teachers have a million things to do, but trying to spend some time, even if it's a small bit, for a couple minutes to check in with them every couple of weeks about their homework progression, I think is really helpful. And in particular, you want to be watching out for rushism. Rushism, they do it on the bus really fast and they scribble it down. Rushism is a sign that time isn't being dedicated to it. So trying to make sure that they're doing it in a way that's consistent and not rushed. Yeah.
What's the Illinois Department of Rehab Services figure into the equation
So, the question is about the Illinois Department of Rehabilitation Services. If you're not familiar, the Illinois Department of Rehabilitation Services is a state agency that helps people with disabilities find employment. Often, if a part of one's employment goal is education, they will sponsor for a student's tuition costs or for supplemental expenses, like maybe they need tutoring or they need help with transportation. So there are lots of ways that Illinois Doors can help out. Again, the key to that is planning ahead. Doors counselors, like everyone else, the more time that they know what's coming down the line, the more apt they are with you as a parent to support your child's education. If you show up to the Doors counselor a month before fall classes start and say, I want you to pay for my kid's tuition, they're probably not going to do it. If you come 2 years ahead of time and say, my kid wants to be an electrician, or my kid wants to go of U of I, and maybe they don't even know what they want to study, but they know that's part of the plan, the counselor is more apt to sponsor you for that because they know you've thought it out. And if you don't even know how to become a Doors client, it's very easy to do. If you just do a quick Google search for Illinois Department of Rehab Services, or you can email me and I'll send you a link. There's a self-referral form you can fill out and someone will contact you. Wait times can be long, so when you fill out that form, it's probably going to be 4 to 6 weeks before you even get a first appointment, which is why planning ahead is so important. But do it, because it's another resource that can help your child be successful. Yeah?
As a parent and that homework issue,
Yeah.
who's doing the homework? So the other night, we had 3 hours to answer 7 questions, just because we would do a forum basically, and it was an advanced class. So we had to think in a way that isn't so straightforward. Any advice on how to break down the yelling? That answer's good enough. Really not.
Oh, you would be surprised how often my points turn to something like couples therapy with the fighting. Yeah, no, going back to the poem, there are going to be challenges, there's going to be pushbacks, and it's hard, it's very hard, but pushing back is good. Talking to other parents and what they're doing can be helpful. I think I'm a big fan of operant conditioning and rewards. So, you know, if you do it, you get this. Video games is often a good motivator for these students, you know. If you want God of War 4, you're going to have to finish these problems in this amount of time. But it's not easy. It's not easy. But we know if those growing pains, if they happen in high school, college is easier, okay? You don't want to be doing it in college because now you're paying money, right? It breaks my heart when I have students who go to really expensive 4-year schools where the tuition is $20,000, $30,000 and it gets thrown down the toilet because they don't know how to do homework that first semester. So more power to you.